Yeah.
Hey guys,
Hello.
welcome to my interview. um,
I was just
Literally, like I'm introducing
hi.
people to my own
This is
interview.
my interview.
Yeah. I will ask myself questions and then answer them myself.
We've come to
Um,
find out that Momin actually has schizophrenia. It's not a fear anymore. He
Essentially,
just talks to
essentially,
himself in the mirror. It's a
yeah.
good look.
Um, so we wanted to do this video, I think so Nick kind of like wanted to like do kind of like an interview style video just to ask me about my contamination OCD journey. And I don't know what questions he asked for me because I kind of wanted it to be like you come up with the questions and just like ask me what they are. So yeah, hello, Nick, how are
I
you?
am very excited to do this. So I think what I want to do is I do a lot of people that come in because we focus so
Hmm.
much on the beliefs and the behaviors.
Yeah,
There are people, not everyone, but there are people that rightfully so ask, does anything in my past matter at all? And I say it does. It just doesn't matter in the sense of like, you definitely need to know about your childhood, definitely in order to recover. I mean, you can
yeah.
highlight things, right? So, like for myself, the way I was raised in the household makes sense of why anger was a problem in my life. So, the first question I wanted to ask you was from when you can kind of remember, maybe even like 8 years old to say 15, like that period of your life, how was it like living in Pakistan? How was it? Were you developing OCD at the time? Did you notice now looking backwards? How was like that period of your life?
Yeah, for sure. I think like I had uh I mean now looking back, obviously at the time I did not know, but I had OCD for sure. And at the time it was more health OCD related because I had a massive fear of throwing up. And I was just constantly asking my because my parents are doctors, so I would ask my mom for reassurance, like, hey, I've had this and now I'm eating this. And in my mind, I thought that the combination of some two foods can maybe make some kind of like bad concoction in me that will make me throw up. And like, it took me honestly years to unlearn that because that's also not true, right? Right? Like, um, so I had health OCD for quite a while. I think there were some early signs of contamination, but it was like very subtle because I think so. My mom is a bit of a clean freak, but not like she doesn't have OCD, but like she just likes things to be orderly and clean
That's
and
how my mom is. I get it. Yep.
yeah, like your stereotypical, oh, she's so OCD, that kind of thing,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
we were raised in a way like if we, let's say, went to the dentist, for instance, and when we would come back home, I would like she'd be like, okay, like we all have to change our clothes because the dentist that we went to was his like little clinic corner kind of thing was within a hospital, and my mom was always like, if you go to hospital spaces and things like that, we should like clean your like have a fresh pair of clothes when you come back home because it's a that kind of environment where ill people are coming and things like that, blah blah. So in some ways, I think very early on, I developed that kind of sense of okay, in hospital spaces, like I can't just be like sitting in the waiting area, touching the metal chairs and then touching myself and then eating with the same hand. I have to wash my hands first and then I should eat, that kind of thing. So there was a little bit of a sense of, you can say, health slash contamination slash cleanliness ish, but it wasn't, I don't remember it being overwhelming, or it wasn't like, oh my god, like I wasn't freaking out at all. Those were some early contamination things, but you gave me the age range of like 8 to 15 because essentially like 13 was the time where it really kind of like blew up. But I don't know if you want me to go into that right now
Well,
or
this
not.
it's interesting to me because I mean I just got extremely. I don't speak about this a lot. I just got very fortunate. Like my OCD did not become chronic until I was 29. And now
Hmm.
I have. Don't get me wrong. When I look back at my life now, I'm like, whoa, I had pretty severe mild OCD. I mean, it was
Yeah.
didn't go to the beach for 10 years living in Florida. So I definitely want to hear about that. So I want to hear like so from because you're how old now, Moment?
30.
Okay, so God, wow, that's such a long time. Okay, so 13 to 18. How was
Yeah.
that period of your life?
Oh, it was extremely confusing. Like when I look back at that time now, like I was like a hot mess. And literally, like I mean, I can't imagine like what I went through at times, you know, it just like completely blows my mind because I was extremely confused. I was coming to terms with like a lot of things in my life, like with myself, with experiencing sexual abuse as well. That's where the OCD kind of blew up for me actually, like when I was 13 years old. So like I don't know, I mean it was a bit of those years where it was a whiplash. It like that's how I can just explain it, because it felt like in many ways life was completely out of my control, in a way. And I think that's part of the thing that really, you know, in many ways, like fueled my anxiety even more so. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea about myself in the world, I guess. Deep insecurities about what people think of me. What do my friends think of me? Do people even like me? And even though I would get like I had like a ton of validation from people around me, but I was still deeply just, I felt like, and again that's then your classic OCD voice, which is like when people would say, oh, you're, you know, you're such a good friend, or my teachers would say like he's a brilliant student, in my mind I'd be like, yeah, but you don't know who I really am, or you don't know like the, you know, what I truly am like.
So you
If
had
you
it
know,
from
you
you
would
had
never
it
like
from
me.
that angle, where I had it from. It's so this is what makes interesting OCD so interesting, and this is good for everyone to hear. A lot of people have it the way the Momin had it. Me, I was, it was, I could just be always be doing more. It wasn't a guilt shame. It wasn't, oh my gosh. It was, no, I could be doing more. I have to prove to you why I'm better. And it was like a constant cycle like that. And that is because, like, for you, because you have how many siblings?
Three. I had three elder siblings.
Okay, so when you were like almost 18, like 16 to 18, that range, were they all in their 20s?
They were, yeah, they were all in their 20s, yeah.
Did you notice OCD behaviors in them when you were like 16 to 18? So it would, right, I know it was like completely
None
oblivious.
at all.
But
I
now,
was like, I'm basically the essential uh like uh crazy person over here. You know, like because I did not see it in them at all. And like in fact, that's where I was like, it was a very strange kind of time in my life, because in school I had like a ton of validation in terms of, you know, I had a lot of friends, my friends liked me, and I got along with most people. My teachers really liked me because I was a good student. So there I had like a ton of validation, and there was almost this like, oh, he's the best student in class. And my I mean, it sounds so like conceited, but literally like teachers would take my notebook and they would show it in front of the class. Oh, this is how you need to do this, and this is how you maintain your notebook. Like I was like the example that was often shown. And like and so there was that, and at home I felt like um completely, you know, criticized. And it was the complete opposite of what I had in school, because at home I had three elder siblings plus parents. So when you have like, and it's not that they were, you know, it's not that they were bullying me or anything like that, but like I think nobody realizes it from that angle. But when you have like five elder voices, everyone telling you what to do or what you're doing wrong, or don't do this, don't do that, it really then, I mean, I was like, you know, well, I'm probably a shit person. I make mistakes. I can't do anything right. And I really, and now looking back, I can see the complete polar opposites of like in school, I could do no wrong. And at home, I could do no right.
yeah, that,
Because
at your age,
I
it's
was
probably
young.
it's so confusing at that age too, because it's similar to when I tell people, because obviously me and Momin, we and all of us, we work with people that come in 12, 13, 14 with their parents on the call. And it's difficult for us because it's hard to explain some of the rational points to a 13-year-old because their brain,
Yeah.
they have a hard time accepting the realities. It's like when you're our age, I could be in one location. Like I can be everyone in OCD recovery could hate me, and I could go out with my friends in Colorado, and like I could separate those two. But I can only
Yeah.
imagine like, and that's another thing too. Holy crap! So you had five other people in the house, and you're the youngest, with including your parents, and like that
Yeah.
type of like do this, do that, and like getting the typical like youngest sibling crap that people.
Yeah. I mean,
Wow.
people are like, oh, you're the youngest in the house. You must be the baby of the house. I'm like, no, I wasn't. Like, I was not treated like the baby of the house at all. Like, it was the opposite. And again, it's not that people hated me or something, but I think that's how I internalize things as well, and especially coming off of the experience of abuse, because like one of the classic symptoms of people who experience abuse is a lot of internalized guilt and shame. And also, here's the thing, Nick, like, I did not know that it was abuse, right? So imagine from age 13 till, I don't know, till I was 22, I basically for 9 years, I thought I had done something sexual at a young age. So that was where like the guilt was also coming into play, because it was like, oh my God, I've done something so bad. I've done something so terrible. Like I've done something so secret and like, perverse and all that kind of stuff. So I had no clue what it was. For me, it was something completely my doing. Right. And that's where the internal voice of like, oh, you're a bad person. Oh, if people know that you were entangled in some like sexual act with someone, then they would never like you and they would think you're disgusting. They would think this, they would think that. So for me, it was like a very, very real event that had happened that nobody would, accept, or nobody would like. And anyone who, because I try to communicate it in whatever sense of the, situation I had. I tried to communicate it to people, and people had like a very either bad or mixed reaction to it. So for me, like the real eventness of that incident was actually real, because it was like, see, like people have this like taboo kind of response to it, and oh my God, like I can't ever tell people or this and that. So there was a fear of being exposed as well. And so you can imagine then and my contamination wasn't during this period, this up till like 18, 19 years old. My contamination wasn't contamination of dirty things, or like I could roll around in on the floor or the grass or in the mud or whatever it was. I was essentially, I know how this sounds, but I was trying to basically wash away, in a very biblical sense as well. I was literally trying to wash away guilt. Like I was trying to wash away the sensation of like guilt and shame of
I
like
think
I'm a disgusting person.
I think about this too because I was telling you like I was telling Momin I'm watching a and I think everyone, no matter where you live, it's cool to educate about the other areas of the world. I'm watching that documentary called "The Seven Wonders of the Muslim World," and when I did not realize like the five prays a day and all the other aspects of the Muslim
Yeah,
culture.
yeah,
And I was thinking that when I was watching, I was like, I wonder if there's 2.1 billion Muslims. I wonder how many of them have particular fears like this, where those praying rituals could be involved with these type of things. And the other thing I wanted to ask you about too, because that I was going to ask the question about when did you notice the contamination really get bad, but there's actually another question I wanted to throw in between them because anyone that
yeah.
works with us know, like you're gay, we all know this. So how did that, like, when did you notice, like, was there a realization between like 13 to 18 or like
Yeah, yeah.
this
I
was
was 14 years old. It was a very specific conversation I was having with a friend. And it
we've
was an
never
in the
talked
moment
about this.
realization.
I've
Yeah,
never talked like and because the culture too. It's
yeah,
like one last thing before you say anything. It's and
yeah.
anyone that lives like in my situation or in a situation similar, I could have literally came home. Like I could see it already. I could have come home to my dad, looked my dad directly in the eyes, and been like, "Hey,
Hmm.
just so you know, I'm gay." And he would have been like this. He would have said something like, "Be careful with how many men you bring over." Like I just we had a very similar
Yeah, yeah.
personality. Like so, there would have never been. So how did you deal with like that, and then the finding out you're gay with the guilt and shame? Like how did that act? Like oh my
So
god.
actually, I don't know, and I don't know. I'm at times, I know how this sounds, but at times I'm just like a little shocked and amazed at the brain I have because when I when I realized I was gay, like I was like, oh, okay, so this is what it was. Like, and it's like when you realize it, it's kind of like something that you already knew. It that's how it feels. It doesn't it's like it's a revelation, but it's also like, oh yeah, of course. Like, but I know a lot of other gay people who have a lot of internalized like homophobia as well, and they have like a relationship of self-hatred and all those things, especially in context of like society and society not accepting you and things like that. But for me it was kind of exciting to be honest, like even though I was religious at the time as well, and I am still like, I'm not, I don't follow it like down to the T or anything like that. I'm more religious in a spiritual sense rather
Yes.
than like in a
We've
practicing
talked
everyday
about
kind of
that before, and it's like this is something that's probably very difficult. Like, is no one even someone like myself who nothing really. I'm the opposite. I have to think about what I'm going to say, or I just say
yeah.
whatever the fuck's on my head. But like even like someone like myself who accepts anyone in this realm, it's you don't say this to someone. You don't say, "Well, when did you find out that you were like straight?" Like it doesn't like that.
Yeah, yeah,
It's just the way it even comes off the tongue. They're like even from
yeah.
someone who has good acceptance of other people. I'm friends with numerous gay people. Like even just saying it, almost like your brain is like, "Oh, asking that is odd." Like, "Oh, when did you? How
And
was it?" So I can only
and I
imagine,
know
you
that,
know.
yeah, no, and I think like with guilt and shame, like for me, and in some ways, I guess I was lucky with that in how I processed it at that early age, because I could easily also see like other people. I could have, after that realization, already going through guilt and shame in life, then further internalizing like, oh, now I am some kind of abomination or something. But it was the complete opposite. I was like, oh, this is kind of like exciting. I love this. Okay. And I was really happy. I was kind of really happy to have that realization in a way. So that never, but I think like there was there was a very natural as a 14-year-old. Imagine me having like a religious slash philosophical existential crisis of like just trying to figure out, okay, like if I want to follow my faith, and there's also like the sexuality aspect as well. So how do I how does that coexist? Because religion doesn't accept sexuality. So like, but can I have both? And I think as a 14-year-old, like dealing with that big question was um it was a lot. It was a lot. At the same time also just
You
again
would,
trying
moment,
to
you not to cut you off. You would think that deeply at 14.
yeah, yeah, 100%. I remember having like in-depth conversations with people older than me about religion and philosophy and the meaning of life, and what's your concept of God and things like that. So, which is, by the way, part of the reason why reading The Myth of Self-Esteem was no biggie for me because I was like doing a lot of that stuff since I was like 14 years old in a way. And in some ways I think like I was I've always liked this stuff, but I was also thrust into it just by virtue of the things I was going through, and just like me realizing things of who I was and how that factored into daily life with people.
Holy crap! I don't think I. So interesting to see when I meet people like this who think so deep at that age. I didn't. I'm not kidding you. It's not a joke. Like I don't think I thought about why I believed in what I believed ever until I developed chronic OCD. Like people would be like,
Yeah,
"How'd you make it through grad school?" I was like, I can't explain it. Like I didn't, I just would look at something, internalize the concept, memorize it, and then like regurgitate it. There wasn't like a thinking process. And
yeah.
and this is what's so interesting about that. Now let's go into the 20s. So like, because I know this is when it gets probably pretty bad. 20.
This was the worst time of my life.
Okay, so let's go from like 18 to 23, like that 5 year
Yeah,
gap. When did you notice, or I don't know, because like I did with my body dysmorphia compulsions that have been around for 20 years. Like I didn't
yeah.
notice it until it got really bad. Like when did you stop and say, I have something's going on here? like with the contamination when you were like, this is bad?
So there was a period of like a couple of years, 2 to 3 years, I think something like around 16, 17, 18, those 3 years kind of thing, where OCD kind of like took a back seat, like at least contamination wise, right? It took a really big back seat, and I was feeling pretty okay in life, and I thought, hey, I'm fine. Although now looking back, I think the reason OCD took like contamination took a back seat, but what was a bit more at play in a very subtle and almost unnoticeable way was relationship OCD with my friends. And it's not that I was asking my friends for direct reassurance of like, hey, have I upset you? Hey, do you like me? Hey, are we still friends? It wasn't necessarily that, but it was just the fact of going to school every single day and hanging out with my friends. Like in my brain basically processed that as a very reassuring environment of like, I'm going into an environment where, like, I have really good friends, we have fun every day, we all like each other, we want to hang out with each other, we want to hang out after school as well, my teachers like me. So it was a very automatically reassuring environment without me like seeking it, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly. I
then
know
what
exactly what you mean. Yeah.
Right. So after 18, what basically happened was all my friends went abroad, right? And like two of my friends went to Ivy League universities. A couple of other ones moved to like other countries, and a couple of other ones were in other cities. So when I entered college, I basically it felt like being thrust into the complete unknown, because up till that point I was literally in school with my childhood friends, and I like we all knew each other for so many years. I can't tell you how much the like that complete absence, almost cold turkey absence of that reassuring environment, it just like I mean, if my like skull was the roof, OCD like went through the roof outside of my skull. Essentially, like it just blew up in like the worst way possible, and it was literally like I had been having a good time for the last 2 3 years. I was feeling okay. I was feeling stable in life, no compulsions. Like I was on a high, and then complete just downfall into like madness at the time. Compulsions, and here's the thing: my college became my trigger. So I was basically walking into my trigger every single day. And the commute from my house to my college was like 40 minutes. So the closer I got to my college, I could like sense my anxiety going up and up and up and up and up and up. And
Yeah.
there were like literally like road bends and signs and all those things on the road, which would like with each turn, okay, two notches higher anxiety. Okay, on this road, 2 notches higher. On this road, 2 notches higher. So I would basically be like, for 4 years, literally every single day was going into my trigger. And it was
God.
so difficult even doing homework, because when I came home, my wardrobe was, by the way, like very strictly divided into these are my college clothes and these are my home clothes, even down to my socks and underwears, by the way, because I did not want to mix the two. I wanted to keep that separate in a very like contamination.
Not to cut you off. I have a
Yeah,
person
yeah,
I work with now. She's lovely. She's around the 70 age, and
yeah,
this is a one big one for her. I didn't have contamination OCD, and I obviously know how OCD operates, but I'd never seen like some of these intricate compulsions. And so she was explaining to me like what you just said, like this designation of clothing for particular areas, like shoes that are specifically for the inside, shoes that are specifically
yeah,
for the outside, like where they are when she wears them. And I was like, oh my gosh. I remember thinking about you actually when she was explaining this to me, because, and this is so good for people to hear, and not to interject, but to show people, if you know you're making it this far in, that every person, no matter what your fear is, you can have something so different from contamination, like sensory motor, and it's so easy to be like, I don't understand. Like, I don't have any fears. Like, I touch my phone, put it against my face, but everyone's going to think that their OCD is absolutely the worst, because like what
yeah.
Momin is explaining right now, I can't even imagine being in your shoes and thinking about like from the moment you open your eyes, you could probably you're mapping it, right? You're like, I have to go to school today, and this
Oh,
is
100%. Like
holy.
it was all planned out from the moment I woke up. Like it was like, okay, these are the clothes I'm going to wear. These are the shoes I'm going to wear. And I'm going to wear these because tomorrow then I can wear this other pair of clothes and these can be clean and those won't be mixed up. So like it was literally really like my entire day was planned out. And I also like in my mind it would be like, okay, this is a timetable and I have this class in this auditorium. Oh, this auditorium is like extra like triggering for me. So, okay, today I'll wear these clothes just in case like this auditorium super triggers me. And like it was like, oh, like I'm so glad I'm not there anymore. Like it just like sometimes just like gives me the shudders just thinking about it. Like and again, this wasn't like contamination in the sense of like germs or anything like that. It was just that basically like the uptick in my anxiety was specifically. I mean, when college started, it happened, but then the specific uptick also happened when I experienced like a kind of like a bullying incident in college, right? And so for me, that was also from the complete opposite from the extreme reassuring environment back in school, right? So when that thing happened, so then it felt like, oh, the college became negatively associated with like bad experiences. So anything to do with the college in a way, like in a very metaphysical way, that's why I wanted to keep my wardrobe separate, is because I did not want the negative sadness and bad feelings to transfer to my home clothes. If that makes any sort of sense, you
It's
know,
emotional, I
that
guess, a form of an emotional contamination in
yeah,
its
yeah,
own way.
100% mostly contamination coming out as physical contamination and that kind of thing. And so, and because my first year was really bad, and those were a couple of the really bad experiences I had in my very first semester, I did not wear those clothes ever again, uh, ever. I literally just gave those clothes away. I didn't even wear them to college again. I just did not want to carry. But for me, it was like I'm carrying the energy from my first semester back, like into my other semester. So I literally gave those clothes away. Those shoes away. I had those were brand new shoes, and those were really good shoes. I gave those away. I gave my clothes away. I just did not want anything to do with my first semester. So that's
So
essentially what it was.
okay, so let's go forward a little bit more. So what would you say? Let's go to like the darkest. What year would you say you age wise was it the toughest year of your life? If you could be like when I was 24, 25, maybe right before you met Rob.
I think it was. I mean, I think. I mean, because I forget a little bit of the specific age timeline because everything feels a bit fuzzy from that time too. Also because I had really bad DPDR, and most of the time I wasn't even in the present moment,
Oh.
right?
I tell
So
real quick,
like,
it's hard to explain that to people when they like ask me
yeah,
about that. I'm like, after like the first couple months, once my body was just like in exhausted mode, as we know, like from not
yeah,
sleeping, I think I had DPDR from the moment like 2 months after it latched until pretty much until I recovered. Like I
yeah,
just was in like a video game world of exhaustion where Erica would be talking to me and I would just be looking right through her.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
so yeah, so like what would you
And
what
it's
would you
completely
say?
like you feel completely like lost and like lost in the sense of like you're there, you're sitting with your friends and you're even laughing with them, but you're completely disconnected as well,
Yes.
like you're just completely
Yes.
somewhere else. And
It's
so
so
I
weird.
mean, so which is why like my sense of time is very warped from that time. But like I think so around, I think it was probably when I was 22 maybe, I think my third year of college, where at the time it just at that point it had gotten. No, I think my second year of college, in fact, was the worst because at the time I still did not have really good friends, and so going into college again felt like I was just walking into completely like abandoned zone or something, right? So this my second year was the worst. Third year onwards, it got better, not in terms of my OCD or compulsions, but going to college felt like a slightly better experience because I had really good friends by that point. And that was also, I think my second year was also when I kind of like realized I had OCD, and I essentially informed my therapist as well. Oh, by the way, I have OCD. Like, so there was no like formal kind of like diagnosis or anything like that. But at that point, I realized that something's off, because no one should be feeling this level of anxiety, and no one should be doing this level. And because of mental compulsions had taken as well at that point. So there was mental contempt. Like when I was going home, think about it. How many people do you have in one class? I had 40 people in my section in college. And so by the time I went home, I did not want to think about anything related to college. So there were like 40 names, at least 40 names, that were just in rotation in my mind, that were coming in my mind over and over and over again. And I would keep pushing them out because I was like, I don't want to think about anything associated with college, like nothing, nothing, nothing. Like, let's say if there was a person called Nick in my class, by the time I went home, I did not want to think about not just Nick in my class, but also anyone else called Nick as well. I did not want to associate with them. I had a hard time saying Nick, right? I would also then not say words that rhymed with Nick. Like I won't say tick. I won't even say that, because it would, like, I can't do that. I couldn't even write that stuff. I wouldn't be able to listen to a song. There's a Bonnie Raitt song, I don't know, called Nick of Time. I won't listen to that. I'm just giving an example. There was no one
Wow.
called Nick in my class. But that's how it was, right? So I completely wanted to, and so mentally I was pushing out 40 names. I was pushing out like images from my college, from my auditorium. No, I don't want to think about that. No, I don't want to think about my college cafe, any of that. So that was like a really bad time, and also the realization that something's off, something's wrong. I need to do something about it. And of course, at the time I was in therapy, so I went down the route of, let's figure out my past and all
I
the effed
remember
up
that.
things
You
that
did
were
that for a
happening.
while, didn't you?
I did that for like 4 years.
It's
Yeah.
it's so, oh my gosh. And again, it's important for everyone to hear this. We understand why people think this is the right way to do it, because
Yeah.
with psychoanalysis, like there is merit in looking, like, just the basic example, right? I was raised in a family where my father was never home and my mother was raised by two alcoholics. So she was resentful and raised me with anger. Okay. She loved me, but she was a very stern raiser. That subconsciousness triggered anger, beliefs, and responses in me that I had to unwind. But that's
Yeah.
as far as we need to go. Because what happens is, when we sit down with people, and I remember seeing a couple of people myself, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm sitting there, and I remember thinking, how does this have anything to do with the saliva and swallowing hyper awarenesses I'm afraid of right
Yeah.
now? But when there's a sexual abuse trauma, I can only imagine how many human beings,
Oh,
like,
yeah,
just
yeah.
constant review. Uh,
I
oh
was,
my God.
I mean, there was a book I never read, but like a friend gave me a book which was called, I think it was called Waking the Tiger. And it's about like, it was something, I'm forgetting who it was by or something, but it's something about you kind of bringing up or reigniting your trauma yourself to deal with it, something like that, right? And I was at some point considering reading that book, but I never did. And the reason I didn't read that book was, by that time, after like 4 years of going through like very in depth therapy, and I had at that point three different therapists at the time, I think. I went from one, and then I had a good, and those are all overall like good experiences. But I mean, think about it. Like, think about all the things I was trying to deal with. Oh, my father like was a very absent figure when I was young. So first dealing with that, then also, oh, I had three elder siblings who criticized me a lot. Then I experienced some bullying in school. Then there's a sexuality thing. Then there's the sexual abuse thing. And then it was like, oh, all my friends have gone, and now I feel completely alone, and I feel like I don't have a place in the world. So all of them felt like very real issues to deal with, and those were real issues to deal with. I'm not saying that those weren't. And I think like my experience in therapy, I think, just like definitely helped me deepen my understanding about, again, human relationships, and your experiences, and how they can really shape you, inform you. So that information was quite invaluable. But I think by the end of those 4 years, I distinctly remember thinking that I have all this well of knowledge about why I feel the way I feel, how my past experiences shape me, why they make me feel uncomfortable, why are some of those things depressing for me, this and that. I have all that wealth of knowledge, and it was a very deep wealth of knowledge because I went to some of the absolute top therapists in my country, not just in my city, in my country. I mean, they had studied from Ivy League universities, from NYU, from Columbia, like all that kind of stuff. So, but I was like, why do I, anxiety wise, why do I feel worse if I have all this wealth of knowledge? If I have all this awareness, if I've also made some changes in my life in terms of how I operate in my relationships and how I respond and things like that, why am I anxiously worse? And that's when I was like, I need to switch something up because clearly, like, none of this is like helping out. Like, I mean, so, and that's when I think, and this is around the time when I was maybe by this point, I think 25, I think, when I was like, I need something different. 24 or 25, maybe.
That's a
So,
wild story, man. That's like, I mean, you really think
yeah,
about
yeah,
it long. I mean, you went, and it's interesting when you start to really get better and you start to see it all throughout your family. Excuse me, and I see it like, oh, ooh, oh, it happens. You calls at 6 o'clock in the morning on Sunday.
yeah,
You know, you see it like father. Obviously, I always like to say my dad is like he was like at the chronic wall. He just
yeah.
didn't have something to push him over into chronic. Maybe he did. He just hit it so well. Um, I see it in other family members as well, grandparents as well, bad. So it's like it's not until you really get better that you start to. I'm sure you had many moments where you thought, oh, I could see this in this sibling, or I could see this in my
Oh,
parents.
now I see it very clearly. Now I see it very clearly.
Very
Like,
clear. I
my
know. Yes.
my sister, and like, if she, like, she will never, she doesn't watch our channel at all. I wish she did, because I can now see her, she has contamination OCD. Well, she will never admit to, probably, because for her, it comes from an angle of like, oh no, like, I'm someone who's just a very clean and hygienic person.
Yeah. It's
For her, it's like from an angle of disgust and germs, but she has contamination. She most likely has relationship OCD as well. My elder brother is hooked on like reassurance and like constant confessing. Like, he would want to, but basically, like, every single evening on the dinner table, he would almost like narrate everything that has happened in his day, just like mundane things as well. He would feel the need to just like inform and tell. He doesn't have like a specific like theme, but he is hooked on reassurance and confessing. My mother has a massive fear of death. I don't know, for her, I don't see it like translating into compulsions or something. So I don't know if it's not OCD, but she definitely has anxiety, a lot of anxiety around death. And she went through like a bout of cancer like a couple of years ago, and she basically like put off going for checkups like for months, when she was, because she was experiencing complications in her body, so she had a lot of anxiety around that. My dad, now in his 60s, I'm pretty sure has health OCD now. So I'll just give you this quick example because I know you probably have a call after this as well. But my dad is someone who literally like plans out his day minute by minute. Like, he wakes up the same time every day.
I've never
He
done that.
right, he wakes up the same time every day. He has his like diet that he follows. He has his like, okay, 15 minutes I have to go for a walk. Okay, I need to have 4 glasses of water when I wake up. Okay, then I do this, and it's very like planned out, to the point where he's constantly watching the clock. And this one time, what happened was, and this is literally like last year, I think, we were sitting in our living room, and there's a huge like clock in our living room, and the batteries ran out, so the clock stopped, and we were all in the middle of dinner,
Oh, I
and
can't. I
my
mean,
dad just started feeling anxious, and he just started feeling uneasy. He's like, "Do we have batteries in the house? Like, oh, do we have any extra batteries? Oh, what kind of batteries are there, like small ones or are there big ones? Like, oh my, I don't know, like I'm just feeling so like strange. Why has the clock stopped working? And then he kept like talking about it. And my brother was like, okay, fine. After dinner, I'll go get some batteries because we didn't have batteries. He was like, are you going? When are you going? Like, should we maybe just like take the batteries out of the TV remote and put them in the clock?
Whoa. Wow.
Like it was, even though his damn phone is next to him, there's a clock over there. He also wears watches. The clock is there, but because it wasn't displayed right in front of him, like like in the lounge on that big clock, he was like he felt completely unsettled. Like he could not calculate how much time it was till, okay, it's 9 o'clock now. Now I need to do this. It's 9:15. Now I need to do this.
Wow.
Like it's just, so my dad definitely has health OCD and a very discipline related like OCD kind of stuff. So like anxiety and OCD essentially run in my family,
And I
and
have
I
both. I
can
have both sides too.
see
Like my
it now.
mom
Yeah,
was is dating that guy that a lot of people who know me, and you'll be cool for you guys. My mom left a guy. She was with a guy for 4 years. Left that guy to be with my dad. They were together for 40 years. My dad died. Then 3 years later, my mom. 4 years later, my mom's like, "I want to get back with that guy." I'm like, "What guy?" Now they've been dating for like a year,
yeah, yeah,
and I've never seen my mom like in love because my mom and my dad separated when I was 16. And before that,
yeah,
they had no connection. So my mom lost a bunch of weight. And I never even told you this. And I'm like, what's going
yeah.
on? Like, you look skinny. My grandma told me, her mother, who was 90, she's like, your mother's not eating. She's like, I need to look good for Earl. I need to make sure I look good. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, I was like,
Mm,
this is like clear. My grandma told me that my mom at 67 was calling her every week, twice a week, to be like, does Earl love me? Does he want to be with me? I'm like, I'm
no
getting
way.
goose, I'm getting goosebumps right now, even just saying it, because I said to Erica, we were like, Erica knows enough about OCD to be like, that sounds like
Yeah,
relationship OCD. So
yeah,
it's cool to see. That's the one thing that happens. And the thing I kind of want to end on, because we have a couple minutes here, is what would be the number one piece of advice this is a specific question. Number one piece of advice you can give to people that find you or find our channel that not only have OCD, but are also from your area of the world, like Pakistan, Iran, the areas of the world
yeah,
where there's like no awareness of OCD at all.
yeah. What would I say? First of all, family is not as important as you think. I mean, and I say that in the sense of like not that you have to like. I mean, I'm incredibly still close with my family and I love them. But like I think because um, and generally Muslim culture, and I think Muslim culture in general is just like very. I would in fact say like brown culture as well, because you see this in like amongst like Mexican and Latinos as well, where it's a very like family driven kind of like community kind of like culture that you have, and everyone comes together and like you meet your like your first cousins, your second cousins are just as close to you. They're not like people that you don't know. You're very close to them, you meet them regularly and talk to them regularly. But then when you're going through so many different themes, like, and I see this with a lot of like brown people that I do sessions with, who have fear of like a fear of rejection and a fear of disappointing their family. And it's not just like the parents or the siblings, it's also like the larger like clan in a way, so you have to be able to separate yourself a little bit from that kind of notion and be able to, I mean, of course you keep your ties, but also like a good healthy kind of like distance from that. I would say number one, like that's really important. Number two is that, I mean, and I'm not saying, oh, because I did it so you have to do it this way as well, but what I'm saying is that I did not like, my family had no clue exactly how severe my OCD was. I mean, they could see that something was happening, but I did not have to sit them down and explain everything to them and be like, okay, you need to know all of this. Like, they don't know I had to do exposures. They didn't know I had to like do a lot of those things. I was reading books or anything like that. I was literally doing that in isolation completely. Which was fine because I also had at that point accepted that I have to be the one to rely on myself for this. Like I can't depend for my recovery on other people or their understanding of it. So I would say those are like two like very difficult things for sure,
Wow,
that you should keep in mind.
that was awesome moment. I got to know you a lot. This is actually be really cool to do. We should the two of us should interview Sam, like to see like all
Yeah,
the way back. Like that would be really and honestly, like and I know we all know how he is, but it would be really cool to like really do like a 2 hour one, really interviewing Rob and like getting him
yeah,
because you know a lot
yeah,
of it's hard to even imagine how bad each one of our because you see us now as we always say like we see Momin happy and we're smiling and me and you know you don't see those interworkings of the childhood like and totally different from me if you told me
yeah,
right now I know to some people this will sound crazy especially from like maybe the brown area of the world where like culturally family is like this um if you told me right now I would never see anyone in my family ever again like my sister lives in the path she literally was 5 minute walk, 5 second walk from the water in Tampa where the hurricane hit. And my Erica was like, "Are you asking your sister how she is?" I was like, "Yeah, I'll message her." Like
yeah.
my
I don't get that. I don't get that. I mean, and just give you another quick example. Like one of my friends, he lives in Minnesota, and his sister literally lives like what, four houses down on the same road, five houses down. And then he'll be like, I was like, oh yeah, so how's your family and everything? Yeah, I'm thinking of maybe like going to see her. I haven't seen her in a while. I've been meaning to catch up. Maybe I'll, I'll write to her and see if we can meet for dinner. And I'm like, what sort of culture is this? Because
I know.
if my sister lived four like houses down the road, she would literally like without messaging or asking, she'd just show up, or I would just show up and I just like walk in. I would probably have a key and just like walk in anytime I wanted. Like
I
no questions asked, and no even like no hard feelings about that. In fact, no, it would be hard feelings if I didn't do that for that matter.
it's so I know it's so wild. Like my first cousins on my mom's side and my first cousins on my mom's side. One of them she has twins that are three. I've never met them. I have never. We grew up together. Like never. I haven't said
Yeah,
a word to my cousin Jess in probably 5 years. Not a
I can't
single.
fathom that. I cannot fathom that
It,
at
it's
all.
it's so hard for people to like. Erica knows if me and Carly, my sister, neither one of us made a serious attempt to message each other. I will bet my bottom dollar we would go at minimum 12 months without speaking.
Probably. And by the way, and I've learned a lot of that from, genuinely speaking, from American like films and TV shows, because this is exactly the thing that plays out. You know, when it's like, oh, like the sister has randomly showed up at your door. Like the person is like, why is she here? And like, what are you doing here? You didn't tell me. Like, when are you leaving? When are you going back home? And I'm just like, you guys are like heartless and so disconnected and isolated. Like, what is this?
I know it's a totally different culture, but Momin, thank you for
Yeah,
everything. That was great. We'll definitely do this again. You guys know where to
yeah.
find us. Please don't sit in silence, whether you come in or not. Follow the YouTube. Try something. There's hope because both me and Momin, in our own ways, suffered immensely.
And also you can like contamination OCD. I know how physically binding it feels, and it physically limits your life, which is also why I mean that in terms of like helping people with contamination, that's a barrier I face, because anything I recommend is like a physical like boundary to them. Like if I say, hey, why don't you, let's say, at least start going out of the house, it's like, oh, because I can't go out of the house because I can't even touch the front door, or my road is contaminated. So physically it just binds you. So you don't have to live in that caged life at all. You can absolutely recover. I know how that feels and I know how impossible it is, but please trust me, like you can recover from it. So just wanted to
Awesome.
say that.
Awesome. Well, Momin, thank you. You enjoy the rest of
All
your day.
right.
See you,
Yeah, you
everyone.
too. See you.
Peace.
Bye.
Later.